day like today, I'm just out for a day walk, and if I was to lose an item, like a ferro rod or my pocket knife, all it would mean is I probably wouldn't get my hot cup of tea. But if I was on a multi-day trip to a wilderness area, losing one of these items could have some quite serious implications. It tends to be the small items like these, or people's knives, or their pruning saws, or their torches, tend to be the most commonly lost items while people are out bushcrafting. And it's small wonder really, because an awful lot of the smaller items that we buy tend to be in quite subdued colours, so we tend to go for earth tones or dark colours, and they get put on the floor and they get lost. So here are my top tips on how you can stop losing your small items of kit when you're out in the woods. So top tip number one, make it bright. We tend to get things in subdued colours, so make them slightly more colourful. Add a piece of brightly coloured cord to your subdued items. I do that with all manner of my kit, and what it does is if I drop this or leave it on the ground in among all those brown and green leaves, something like that would blend in really well. But the brightly coloured cord attached to the other end makes it a lot easier to see. Another really good item for making things bright is brightly coloured tape. As you can see on a dark coloured ferro rod like this, a little bit of tape suddenly makes it stand out. And again, with a plastic sheath, a few bits of tape on there make it stand out really, really well against a subdued background. This tape is glint tape, and if I drop things after dark, I shine my torch around and this stuff reflects the light back, so it makes it really easy to spot even after dark. My next top tip is all your small items actually attach to your person. Now I know some people carry things in pockets, but I tend not to. Instead, I attach things to my trousers. Jackets and shirts and all those sorts of things tend to get taken off through the course of the day as you warm up or you cool down, whereas your trousers tend to stay fairly constant and they tend to stay on. So I always attach things to my trousers. Now my everyday carry, and this is what I carry every day, whether I'm in the town or I'm out in the woods, all of my everyday carry stuff is in this little pouch. I've got my ferro rod, my pen knife, I've got my torch and a little sharpening stone, all in here. And these are essential items that I carry with me. If I'm out in the woods and I'm carrying just a day sack, then this is absolutely fine. So if I'm out for a multi-day trip and I'm carrying a bigger rucksack with a longer back on it, then my belt pouch would interfere with the hip belt of my rucksack. So what I do in that case is I tend to put those essential items in my pockets. But so they don't get lost, what I do is I tie them on with a big loop of cord. Now that cord is attached to my belt, not to the belt loop, because the belt loop could fail. The belt runs around my waist, is made of good thick leather, and I know that that's not going to fail. I've seen a few other people do this, but they tend to keep the length of cord fairly short. I would keep mine at a sort of mid-length, and what that means is that certainly for things like using my knife, I don't have to take it off the cord for 90% of my cutting tasks. It remains attached to me. That way, it minimises the chances of me putting this down on the floor and walking away and leaving it, because it's attached to me most of the time. I have some on the other side as well, and what I try to do is if I've got two items that I'm using in conjunction with each other, so a knife and a ferro rod, I make sure that the cords are long enough that I can use the two together without having to detach either item. So obviously I'm not always using a pocket knife. There are times when I'm using a sheath knife. And when I do, rather than keep it on my belt where it's covered up with clothing and I can't see it and check on it, I'd much rather carry it around my neck. But this one, I've put all the commonly used items, so my ferro rod and my torch and my knife all grouped together, and all made extra visible with some brightly coloured cords, some glint tape, all things that will help me to stop misplacing or losing this really valuable piece of kit. Now, the knife that I tend to use most often if I'm out in the woods doing a bit of bushcraft is this, my old Mora Classic. And they don't come much more subdued than this. This really is all earth tones. It's got a birch bark sheath. I've stripped the handle of the red paint. The ferro rod has got a wooden handle, and the whistle is made from antler. But again, what I've done with these is I've connected them all to a length of cord that's worn around my neck so that I know where everything is. It's very easy for me to check that I've always got it and everything is tied together. If I want to use the ferro rod, well, I don't detach it from the rest of the setup. Instead, what I do is I take the setup off, remove my knife, use it, put it all back together again, and then slip it all back over my head. That way, this small item has got bigger items attached to it, so it's less difficult to lose or misplace. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then hit the like button. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and you can always leave comments in the section underneath. If you want to email me, feel free to get in touch. My email address will come up on the screen in a moment, and you can always go and check out my Greencraft shop, which is just that, Greencraft shop on Etsy, and you can show your support for the channel by buying one of my Greencraft patches. I've been Neil, and until next time, stay safe.